Some historians argue that the Civil War began along the border between Kansas and Missouri. Many question if there was ever any fighting in Pittsburg during the Civil War. The sack of Lawrence, Battle of Mine Creek, and the Baxter Springs Massacre are battles that many people remember being fought in Kansas during the Civil War. However, there were many encounters along the border throughout the war. One in particular took place in our own backyard, Crawford County. Whether you call it the Battle of Cow Creek, the fight in the Bend, or simply the skirmish of Cow Creek, the intriguing story of the fight that took place in the fall of 1864 is brought to life every Labor Day weekend at the Crawford County Historical Museum. A newspaper article found in the 1901 Pittsburg Headlight uncovered historical evidence that there was indeed a clash between the 6th Kansas Cavalry, who was escorting a refugee train from Arkansas to Fort Scott, when they ran into Confederate troops along the military road. The bushwhackers forced the refugees to reroute. The story of the skirmish was told to A.J. Georgia, a prominent figure in early Crawford County, one of the first justice of the peace, school teacher, and superintendent by Civil War veteran. Pleasant M. Smith, a blacksmith of the 6th Kansas Cavalry who was one of the participants. Georgia later retold the story to the Pittsburg Headlight. The Kansas Cavalry had been in southwest Missouri gathering up refugees, women and children whose husbands and fathers had been drafted in order to keep them from starving during the winter. The Kansas Cavalry was escorting about 500 refugees in a wagon train when near Newtonia, Missouri, General Price, with 4 regiments of Confederate troops, started in pursuit. The Union troops and refugees had reached Cow Creek south of Pittsburg and due east of where Chicopee now is, when the rebels overtook them. The women and children were hurried north, and the Kansans crossed the creek and decided to make a stand in the brush and the timber at the bend of the creek, just where the Memphis Railroad Bridge is now located. In 1901, when the Headlight first printed the story, the railroad bridge over Cow Creek due east of Chicopee carried the Kansas City, Fort Scott, and Memphis lines. The Kansans were greatly outnumbered, but they put up a fight, and when Price and his rebel troops came through the timber and attempted to cross the creek, the Kansans poured in such a hot fire that the rebels were compelled to retreat. It's not known how many lives were lost and how many were wounded in the battle. Some of the bodies were carried off at the time, but several years afterwards, settlers found the skeletons of 12 soldiers in and on the side of the creek. Georgia goes on to tell of another skirmish, which was a sequel to the first. After the fight, the Union soldiers pushed on north in an attempt to escape to Fort Scott. The regiment passed across where the West School building now stands, and had reached a point west of the North Smelters where the pursuing rebels came up. Here the Kansans made another stand on the banks of the creek, almost due west of the North Smelters, which are probably just a few hundred yards from the Crawford County Historical Museum and present-day Highway 69 bypass. Another gallant fight was made, and several more were killed and wounded on both sides, but the brave Kansans were overwhelmed and compelled to surrender. Price took the wagon train and burned it, driving off the stock. The soldiers who were captured were released on parole, and they and the 500 refugees were compelled to walk the rest of the way as they could to Fort Scott. The rebel troops did not continue any farther north, but camped for the night on the side of Pittsburg and then returned to Missouri from whence they had come. Pittsburg Daily Headlight in December 17, 1901.